She laughed with her friends. He pays for Netflix and Hulu while I watch with my ex every night. I just smiled. Later, the profile name I left for her made her drop the remote and walk out of my life. I, 29M, have been dating my girlfriend Claire, 27F, for about a year and a half. I wouldn't call it the most serious relationship of my life, but at the beginning it felt easy. She was funny, outgoing, and good at pulling me out of my introvert bubble. I thought we had a decent balance. I handled most of the boring logistics, paying for streaming services, splitting rent, scheduling bills, and she brought energy and social life into the mix. We didn't live together officially, but she spent most nights at my apartment. That meant she used my Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, and even my Prime account. I didn't mind. I've always been the type of guy who shares passwords with people I care about. In my head, that was normal couple stuff. At first, I didn't notice any red flags. She went out with her friends more than I did, but she always texted, and she'd usually come back to my place after. I figured that's just her personality, more extroverted, more plugged into her social circle. But small cracks started showing in her jokes. At dinners with friends, she'd say things like, "Oh, my name is basically my personal IT guy and bill payer," then laugh. Everyone else laughed too, but I'd feel this sting, like I was being reduced to a walking subscription service. Then one night, I came back from the kitchen while she was on FaceTime with her two closest girlfriends. She didn't know I was within earshot. They were talking about TV shows, and she laughed. Honestly, it's hilarious. He pays for Netflix and Hulu, and meanwhile I watch them with my ex almost every night. He has no clue. They all cackled. I froze in the hallway, holding a glass of water, hearing my stomach drop. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't reluctant. She was proud. That night, I didn't confront her. Instead, I smiled when she came into the room, kissed her on the forehead, and acted normal. My brain was running 100 miles per hour, but my face stayed calm. I've learned that silence, in the right moment, is louder than any argument. Over the next week, I started watching her patterns differently. She'd go home early a few nights, claiming she was tired, but her activity logs on Netflix told another story. Different shows being played late at night, often in the continue watching row, and not shows she'd ever put on at my place. That's when the idea hit me. I didn't want to scream, break things, or beg. That only feeds drama. Instead, I quietly logged into my Netflix and Hulu accounts, went into the settings, and renamed the primary profile. Not to my name, not to something obvious. I changed the username to Enjoy with your ex, smiley face. I left everything else intact, same password, same shows, same history. The only difference was the label she would have to click every night when she sat down with him to binge TV on my dime. I didn't tell her. I waited. The next evening, I was at her place when she grabbed the remote. We were about to watch something together. She opened Netflix like usual, and there it was. The profile name stared back at her. She went pale. Her laugh died in her throat. She dropped the remote onto the couch as if it had burned her fingers. What is that?" she stammered. I just smiled. "Guess you tell me." Silence stretched. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally, she muttered something about it just being a joke with her friends, that she didn't actually watch with him, that it was taken out of context. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I just nodded slowly and said, "Passwords are changed starting tonight. I'll drive you home." She tried to stop me, grabbing my arm, saying I was overreacting, begging me to talk. But my mind was already made up. See, the thing is, betrayal doesn't always come with lipstick on collars or obvious lies. Sometimes it comes with laughter, the kind that reduces you to a punchline in someone else's story. And in that moment, I realized I'd rather be alone with my peace than partnered with someone who found joy in mocking me to others. So I let the silence do what words never could. After I dropped her off that night, I drove home with the windows down. The air felt sharper than usual, cleaner. Not because I was happy. I wasn't. I was gutted. But because I'd finally cut the thread that had been tying me to someone who clearly didn't respect me. The first thing I did when I got back was log into every service: Netflix, Hulu, Prime, Spotify, and change the passwords. I also updated the email and security questions, just in case she'd save them. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Boundaries aren't boundaries unless you enforce them. I thought that was the end of it. I'd slowly fade her out of my life. and she'd move on to whatever thrill she thought her ex was giving her. But of course, it wasn't that simple. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages from her. "We need to talk. Please. You're misunderstanding what I said. It wasn't serious. I was just making my friends laugh. Why would you do that with the Netflix name? That was cruel." I didn't reply. I've learned that silence unsettles people far more than shouting ever will. That evening, she showed up at my door. No warning. She looked disheveled, eyes puffy like she'd been crying. She held up her phone. "Why are you ignoring me?" I let her in, mostly because I didn't want a scene in the hallway. She immediately launched into her story. "It's not what you think," she said. "Yes, I joked about watching shows with my ex. But it wasn't like that. We hung out a couple times, that's it. I shouldn't have said it like that to my friends. I was just being stupid." I sat on the couch and let her talk. She paced, waved her hands, tripped over her own explanations. Finally, she said, "Why are you being so cold? Don't you want to fix this?" I looked at her and said calmly, "I don't fix disrespect. I remove it." Her mouth opened like she'd been slapped. She sat down hard on the arm of the chair across from me. "You can't just throw away everything we've had over a stupid joke." "Claire," I said, still calm, "you didn't just make a joke. You laughed with your friends about me paying for something you share with your ex every night. You made me into the punchline. You weren't embarrassed about it. You were proud. That's not something you accidentally say." She was silent. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have a comeback. She stayed quiet for a while, then whispered, "I didn't think you'd ever leave. You're safe." That word, safe, hit me harder than the rest. I realized then that in her eyes, I wasn't a partner. I was a cushion, a convenience, a man who'd tolerate being mocked because I was too safe to leave. I stood up, opened the door, and said, "You were right about one thing. I am safe. Safe from this. Don't come back." She cried, pleaded, tried to follow me, but eventually she left. The days after, for about a week, she texted me nonstop. Walls of messages ranging from apologies to accusations. "You're the love of my life. I messed up. You're being heartless, punishing me for nothing. So what? You're just going to throw us away after one mistake." Everyone jokes about their partners. It doesn't mean anything. I didn't answer. Friends of mine told me I should at least hear her out, that maybe it wasn't as bad as it sounded. But they hadn't seen her face when she read that username on the screen. They hadn't heard the tone in her voice when she bragged to her friends. She eventually stopped reaching out directly and started posting on social media instead. Vague quotes about betrayal and being misunderstood, long captions about toxic silence, and how some people throw away love instead of fighting for it. I didn't comment. I didn't take the bait. The ex. Then came the twist I half expected but still didn't want to hear. Her ex reached out to me. He messaged me through Instagram. Of all places, saying, "Man, I don't know what she told you, but we never watched anything together." She made it sound like we were, but it was just texting. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Whether they sat on the couch together or just shared late-night messages, the betrayal was the same. She turned me into a joke for her friends, whether or not the details were literal. The calm after. It's been a month since I cut her off completely. The first few days were hard. I won't pretend otherwise. The apartment felt too quiet. My evenings felt emptier without someone on the couch beside me. But the emptiness was better than humiliation. I've started running again after work, cooking proper meals instead of ordering takeout, reading more, sleeping better. Slowly, the space she left is filling with things I actually chose. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. Respect isn't lost in one grand betrayal. It erodes in little cracks, the jokes, the dismissals, the things people say when they think you're not listening. But once it's gone, no apology, no frantic excuse, no it was just a joke, can glue it back together. I didn't slam doors. I didn't scream. I just smiled, renamed a profile, and stepped back into my own peace. And honestly, that silence has been the most powerful reply I've ever given. Update 1. It's been about 3 months since I last saw Claire. I wasn't sure I'd ever post an update, but a lot has happened, and I realized the part no one talks about is what comes after the mic drop moment. When I renamed that profile and cut ties, I thought that would be the end. A clean break. But endings rarely stay clean when people are involved. Her attempts to reconnect. 2 weeks after I changed all my passwords and shut her out, she reached out again. First it was texts, then long emails. Then, eventually, letters slipped under my apartment door. The messages all followed a similar arc. Guilt trips. We had something real. You're just too proud to see it. Excuses. I only said those things because my friends pressure me to joke like that. Promises. I'll cut him off. I'll delete everything. I'll prove myself if you just give me another chance. There was even a line that made me stop in my tracks. You're the stable one, the man I know will always be there. I panicked because it was too good. That one stung, because it revealed what I had already suspected. She didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a safety net. The guy she could run back to after playing with chaos. I didn't respond. Not once. And yet, every week or two, the messages kept trickling in. Shorter, angrier. Then sad again, like she was cycling through the stages of grief, except she was grieving the stability she'd burned. The friends' involvement. Mutual friends eventually started chiming in. Two different people reached out to tell me Claire was telling everyone that I had ghosted her without warning, that I had been emotionally abusive with silence, and that I blew up a good relationship over a joke. I didn't defend myself publicly. That was the hardest part. Every instinct screamed to send screenshots of what she'd said, to show everyone the FaceTime transcript, to prove I wasn't insane. But I remembered something my dad told me years ago when my older brother went through a messy breakup. The truth always has longer legs than lies. It walks slower, but it gets further. So I kept my mouth shut. Interestingly, the same friends who initially pressured me to hear her out have grown quieter. A few even admitted to me privately that Claire's stories don't add up, that she keeps contradicting herself when she tries to explain. It turns out silence is not only disarming, it's revealing. People fill in the blanks when you give them rope. The X factor. About a month ago, I heard from another mutual acquaintance, not even a close friend, more of a friend of a friend. Apparently, Claire's ex, the one she bragged about watching shows with, had been seeing her casually for a while, but he wanted nothing serious. She kept pushing, trying to escalate, and he eventually cut it off completely. So in the span of 3 months, she managed to lose both the man who loved her quietly and the man who gave her the chaos she thought she wanted. Again, not my circus, not my monkeys. But the irony isn't lost on me. My own growth. Here's the part one didn't expect. Cutting her off didn't just remove toxicity. It forced me to confront my own patterns. I realized how often I'd minimized little comments in past relationships. The jokes that came at my expense, the harmless digs in front of friends, the ways I'd get painted as boring just for being dependable. I used to laugh it off, play the straight man, convince myself it wasn't worth making a scene. But when I overheard Claire's FaceTime call, it all clicked. That wasn't harmless. That was death by 1,000 cuts. Since then, I've been going to therapy once a week. Nothing dramatic, just a space to unpack why I tolerate disrespect until it piles high enough to bury me. And I've been lighter. I won't pretend I'm suddenly thriving, but I sleep deeper. I'm not waiting for a text that feels like a grenade. I've started spending weekends hiking again, picking up hobbies I'd let atrophy. The remote that started it all. A funny detail. I still have the remote she dropped that night. She left it on my couch in her panic, and I never returned it. Every now and then, I pick it up and just hold it. Not because I miss her, but because it reminds me how fast truth can surface when you least expect it. One small action, renaming a profile, pulled the curtain back on months of hidden disrespect. I don't keep it out of spite. I keep it as a lesson. Final thought for now. I don't know what Claire's doing at this exact moment. I imagine she's still spinning stories, still looking for someone who will be both thrilling and safe, chaotic and stable. But I do know what I'm doing. I'm building a life where I don't settle for being laughed at behind my back. A life where I'd rather be alone on the couch than be reduced to the guy who pays for subscriptions. The quiet after a breakup isn't glamorous. It's not movie montage joy. It's raw and sometimes lonely. But it's honest. And after living as a punchline, I'll take honest over entertaining any day. Final update. A year has passed since the night Claire dropped the remote like it was on fire. Funny how one small object, a plastic rectangle with buttons, can end up marking the line between before and after in someone's life. Where she ended up. Through the grapevine, mutual friends, social media leaks I never asked for. I've learned bits and pieces about Claire's life since we ended. The short version? She's been spinning. Her ex never came back around. Apparently, he told mutual friends he was done with the drama, and blocked her after she tried showing up at his place unannounced. She dated another guy briefly, someone she met at a bar, but that crashed quickly too. Same cycle. Fun in the beginning, then conflict when she pushed for more than he wanted. By month 6, she'd moved back in with her parents temporarily. She posted vague stories about rebuilding and finding herself. Most recently, I heard she started telling people she lost the best man she ever had because of a joke. That wording stuck with me. A joke. Even after all this time, she's still minimizing it. Not betrayal, not disrespect, not mocking. Just a joke. And maybe that's the clearest sign of all. She doesn't actually regret what she did, only that she lost what she had because of it. Where I ended up. Meanwhile, I didn't exactly become some romantic hero either. I've dated a little here and there, but nothing long-term yet. And honestly, I'm fine with that. I used the past year to work on myself in ways I'd neglected for a decade. I ran my first half marathon. I got promoted at work after finally volunteering for a project I used to avoid. I reconnected with my brother. We hadn't spoken much since he moved states, but now we talk weekly. I've been seeing a therapist regularly, digging into why I allowed myself to be cast as the safe, boring guy for so long. The biggest change? I don't flinch at silence anymore. When you've lived through weaponized silence, hers, where she laughed behind my back, your own silence starts to feel like power, not punishment. It's space. It's clarity. The kids I never had. One unexpected ripple. Several friends of mine are married with children now. Watching them raise kids made me realize something heavy. If Claire and I had stayed together, I might have had children with someone who mocked me behind my back. Kids who would eventually hear the laughter, sense the disrespect, learn that was normal. That thought chills me more than anything she actually did. In a strange way, I'm grateful the betrayal came early enough to stop that future from solidifying. Closure that doesn't feel like closure. About 2 months ago, Claire emailed me again. The subject line just said, "One last thing." The email itself was short. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know I did love you. I just didn't know how to handle stability. I thought it made me weak. Turns out, it was the strongest thing I ever had. I'm sorry for laughing when I should have cherished you." I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop. Because here's the thing. Apologies don't always equal reconciliation. Sometimes, they're just another way of saying, "Please let me rewrite the ending so it hurts less for me." I don't hate her. I don't even feel bitterness anymore. But forgiveness isn't the same as reopening the door. And I've learned that my peace matters more than anyone's need for closure. The remote. Yes, I still have it. The remote she dropped. It sits in a drawer by my couch. The battery cover missing, useless now. But I keep it for one reason. It reminds me that disrespect rarely shows up as a grand betrayal. It sneaks in through laughter, through casual words, through people telling stories where you're the fool and they're the clever one. That remote is my reminder not to ignore small humiliations, not to excuse being reduced to a punchline. Because once you accept that role, it becomes the whole play. What I've learned: silence isn't weakness. It can be dignity, clarity, a refusal to dance in someone else's chaos. Safe isn't boring. Stability is the foundation for every good thing in life. The wrong people will mock it. The right people will treasure it. Respect is non-negotiable. Lose it, and everything else, love, attraction, even history, collapses with it. Jokes aren't always jokes. They're truth in disguise, softened for an audience. If you're the punchline, you're the sacrifice. Final reflection. People sometimes comment on Reddit stories like this with, "Well, you won. She lost." But I don't think of it that way. This wasn't a game. She didn't lose me to another man, and I didn't win by walking away. What happened was simpler and heavier. We both revealed who we were when respect cracked. She clung to appearances. I clung to silence. And in the end, silence carried me further. I don't know if she'll ever truly understand why that username on a Netflix profile mattered so much. But I do. It was the first time I let the truth sit in the room without trying to argue with it, soften it, or excuse it. It sat there, plain as day. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. So yeah, 1 year later, I'm not with anyone new yet. But I'm with myself. And for the first time in a long time, that's enough.